we all think managers are a great idea because it saves us time, but it can also be the kiss of death for your restaurant. I've seen this happen way too many times where literally you set up your business, you were running it well, everything was going great, manager comes in and blam, your sales go down, your profits go down, your team quits, and you are left picking up the pieces. This happened to me. Welcome back to the Restaurant Growth Accelerator. I am your host, Andrew Scott, multi-location owner for almost 20 years, and now I help restaurant owners grow their sales, increase their profits, and help them spend more time with their family. We've got Dave Doyle, our Client Success Director here, and today we're talking about, is your manager destroying your business? Now, this has actually happened to me. So I'm going to start with that because we all think managers are a great idea because it saves us time. They can take on some of the responsibility, but it can also be the kiss of death for your restaurant. You know, I've seen this happen way too many times where literally you set up your business, you were running it well, everything was going great, manager comes in and blam, your sales go down, your profits go down, your team quits, and you are left picking up the pieces. This happened to me. So let me walk you through my situation, and then we'll talk about what I learned from it, and then what you guys can take from this to help do this better in your restaurant. So when I first hired my manager, I was opening up my second location, and I hired two managers because I needed one for my existing location, and I needed one for my next location. Now, as I was going along, I was training them both. I literally sent them to a training program for restaurant management. And I realize now that I could have just taught them better myself. But anyway, that's a story for another day. Anyhow, so we got them doing that. And then, of course, 6 weeks before my second location opened, the one that was supposed to run that one quit. Of course, why wouldn't that happen before I opened up my second restaurant? Anyway, shit happens. So I had one manager, and then I was fully running my second one. And if you guys have ever opened up, a location, you know what goes into it. It can be time intensive, especially if you don't have the team or the systems in place. So I was working 80 plus hours a week because I was the only one that knew how to do everything. I literally couldn't leave because people didn't know how to operate our POS system properly, and they didn't know all the menu. And anyway, so I learned along the years how I could do all that better, so I didn't even have to work at our openings eventually. But when I was starting out, I didn't know all that stuff. So I had this manager, and she had been working with me, and she was one way with me, but a totally different way to everyone else.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that. So here's the thing. I get into my new location, and then all of a sudden I start hearing some people quitting, and I see our sales start to go down a little bit. But I'm so focused with our brand new location that I don't have time to pay attention. I don't have the bandwidth. I am just fully focused on it. I literally wasn't even meeting with her, seeing what was going on. I was so busy with my new location. It just, I needed that one to still keep making the money it was making because it was going to cover, my new one while we were opening up. And obviously we're taking losses in the first little bit, which you don't have to do, by the way. You can actually open up profitably, but I didn't know how to do that either. So this time we were taking losses. So sales started going down. Our food costs shot up. Our labor costs shot up. People started quitting. And of course, she asked for a raise all at the same time. And I'm like, okay, why not? Why not ask for a raise when all of your business metrics suck? But I need more money. And so what was I going to do? I couldn't go back and run the business. I had another business to take care of. So I gave her more money and said, yeah, I'm going to give you more money, but you got to make sure this improves and this improves and this improves. Well, guess what? It didn't. It just kept getting worse. And then, oh man. Okay. So this is literally the situation of how it happened.
This is a great story.
Thank you. Yeah, just welcome to the life of Andrew before he knew what the hell he was doing. So now I can't remember if I let her go or whether she quit. I can't remember. I think I let her go, but I'm not 100% sure. Don't quote me on that. I believe I let her go. And then I remember talking to who was the assistant manager at that time and basically said, hey, can you run the business? And of course, I gave her no training whatsoever, no support, no help. It was a recipe for perfect success. And sure enough, she lasted like 2 months, because most managers, when they come into these types of roles, we usually hire like decent-ish character people. And so, but they don't have the skills to be able to do it. So I hired someone who was a great worker. And so she worked hard, but then everyone else made mistakes, and so she just kept working harder to cover them all up and cover them all up and cover them all up until she was just burnt out, right? And then I remember, because this business was open till 4 a.m, and we served like the after bar crowd after the bars closed, and we would be busy. I just remember I was at a conference for a franchise, and I remember like getting off the flight, and it was like 4 a.m. or something like that. And I remember getting this text from her being like, "My key is in the drawer. I'm out." Just something like that. And I was like, well, that's great, because like she works tomorrow, and now I just arrived on a flight, and now I've got to go and fill this shift in like a few hours. But anyway, and then I remember calling my other manager. This is a little bit later. So my other manager, who I promoted, and she was actually still in Banff, in Canada, and at the conference where that was. So basically, I had segmented it so that like I went early before the conference, and then they stayed a little bit later, some of them. So anyway, I called her, and it was like super early in the morning there. And I'm like, "Hey, by the way, you're now running multiple locations. Have fun." And so this makes me seem like a terrible owner, doesn't it? But this is literally this is the way the organization was run before I figured out what I was doing. And the reason I'm sharing this story, because I'm sure people listening to this are like, "Oh yeah, like, what else are you going to do? You try and take the only person that's capable, and let's overload them with more work and not provide them with support and not provide them with training and just hope it works out." That's the way most restaurant owners run their business. And let me tell you, that is a recipe for disaster. So what we're trying to do here is we are trying to do things better. So what can we learn from my situation, and what did I eventually learn that we needed to do with
where do we begin?
With managers? I know it's a laundry list, bro.
But we had fun at that conference.
Oh yeah, it was a great time. I remember you and I eating pizza at 3 a.m. outside. Was it Buffalo Bills or something? It was one of the bars. Anyway, it was a good conference.
I remember playing guitar in a room with a piece of pizza. I think there's a video. Anyway,
it was a good conference though. So point is, actually, sorry, no, it was Whistler. It wasn't Banff. My bad. I had to, I get those. I'm
both beautiful places.
Both beautiful places. It was Whistler. That's what it was. It was Whistler. Anyhow, so here's what I learned eventually is that we often promote managers from people who are good workers, people that we can rely on and we can trust. But let me ask you this. Is a worker bee skill set the same skill set you need to succeed as a manager?
No.
But
can it be learned?
Oh, absolutely. But most owners that are listening to this right now are like, it isn't? Like, when you ask the question, it kind of makes sense. Like, because managing people is the skill set required to do that is that of using your words and getting others to take action based on the words you say. It is the ability to lead people, guide people, to hold them accountable, to coach them. Those are the skill sets you need to be able to use your words to actually affect change amongst multiple people. Now, when you are in a worker bee scenario, or what we would call a product worker or a frontline worker, the only skill set you need to do is this physical skill set. So you can just do more of it. And so here's the thing. A manager that you promote from a frontline worker to a management role, here's what's changed, and they don't get it. First off, success in their previous role was derived from them doing more and better of what they were doing, right? So if they worked harder, they would get more reward. They would be noticed. That would be a good job or a job well done. They could do what they were doing better. Same things apply. But in a manager, you can work harder and it's not going to make a lick of difference because there's no way that one person can work hard enough to pick up the deficiencies of 10 people on a team. There's no way. You cannot, there's not that many hours in a day, and you could not outwork that. The only thing it'll lead to is burnout, which is why I think it's a stat of like 80% of managers burn out in the first 6 to 18 months and leave management. That's the stat. It is an extremely high amount because they're trying to do what made them successful in one role in the next role. And there's a great book about that literally we send to our clients. What is it like?
How to Be the Boss.
How to Be the Boss that everyone wants to work for. It's a great book. Right. If you have not read it, I highly suggest you read it. I probably should have like created a link so like I get a commission from it. But anyway, there's nothing like that. Just go buy it. It's a great book. I recommend I get all of my managers to read it. And I send it to every single one of my clients as soon as they come on board because it is that important. And so here's the thing. People jump from a project, like a product role, to a management role. And they don't realize that their definition of success has changed and the way to get success has changed. So they just try and do the same things over and over again. And they just can't do it because you can't outwork the deficiencies in your business at scale. You know, if you have a very small business,
you need to leverage that team.
Exactly.
And get them to perform each a little bit more and everything gets better.
Well, and here's the example that I always use. Let's say you make burgers, right? And maybe you can make like 50 burgers in an hour or something like that, right? And again, I should have done the math in advance of this, but say you can make 50 burgers in an hour and you work really hard and you can improve your efficiency by 10%. As a manager. So then, you're making 55 burgers an hour. Well, guess what? Say you have 10 people on your team and what happens is they can all make maybe 40 burgers an hour because they're not as good as you. And all of a sudden, you could either make the choice of making those extra, 10% efficiency for you, which gives you an extra 5 burgers an hour, or if you really, really try hard, you can get everyone else to improve their efficiency by 10%, so get them up to 44 burgers an hour, but there's 10 of them. That equals 40 more burgers per hour instead of the 5 that you could do by working on yourself. That is management in a nutshell. So like, how can you focus on getting everybody to improve and do better instead of just trying to do more yourself? Because doing more yourself, no matter how hard you work, will never outweigh what you can do as an entire team if the entire team performs better, right? So we are looking for those points, as you said, Dave, of leverage. And leverage basically means getting more output for your input of action. That's what leverage is. So when we're talking about management, that is the first thing. So we often promote people, but we don't teach them any of this. So if you think about the managers that you have promoted and that you have hired, what kind of management process did they go through? What kind of training process did they go through to get where they are? There's another stat. It's like 90% of new managers get zero training at all on how to be a manager. And let's go one step further. This is my example. I gave my manager no training, and I also didn't have a good management system already set up. I was like, I'm going to hire a manager, and like the thing's running pretty well, but it was only running because I was there all the time. I didn't have a good management setup in place. So obviously a manager is going to be able to come in and like fix all the problems and like do things better than I did, right? That's what managers do because I'm paying them a little bit more and I'm titling them a manager. Obviously that means they're going to solve all those problems. Right, Dave?
Absolutely. And you interviewed them and they had previous experience managing at a completely other place of which you don't know how they were trained there. And it's completely different systems. And yeah, but they're just going to come in and fix it.
Yeah, exactly. And we have people that think this all the time, and it almost always ends up in disaster. Now, it is possible to hire externally and find good candidates. That's 100% possible. It is difficult, though, and I will say that. Now, here's the thing. It's difficult no matter which way you slice it, whether it is promoting people from within and training them or hiring externally and then bringing them in and then training them. The success rate on hiring managers is quite low, especially because often our pay scales aren't aligned the way in which they should be. So we're not attracting top talent. We're attracting talent, from other places that maybe weren't, A players. So it's a very common thing. So I guess what I want to talk to you guys about when we're talking about managers, a few things that you need to know is that regardless of whether you hire externally or hire internally, there's a few things you need to do. And number one, you need to set expectations with them. Because if you don't have expectations, how can you expect them to know what to do, when to do it? What does success look like in that role? So again, most of us don't do any training, but then when we meet with them, we just are like, hey, how are things going? Oh, I've got this problem. Okay, well, we'll do this, right? But what does success mean for them? Like, do they have targets on exactly what they should be doing? Do they have targets on what their food and their labor costs should be? Do they have targets for the amount of sales that should be coming in or the sales increase that you expect from them? Do you actually have expectations? And are you giving your time to them to help them achieve it? Well, no, of course, because a manager should just go and do it without my input. Wrong. Everybody needs management, including managers. Let me ask you this. In a big Fortune 500 company, you might have a VP of sales, a VP of operations, VP of finance, like all that kind of stuff. Do you think they have meetings with the CEO? Yes, they do.
Absolutely.
Right? Even the highest levels still have meetings. Do you think that those big CEOs have coaches that they work with? Yes, they
Absolutely.
do. And usually psychologists, anyway.
Yeah. Or a board to answer to or whatever.
Yep, absolutely. So there is never a place where no management is required. Just because they're a manager does not mean that they don't need managing. Right? I want to make that clear. So
That's probably the biggest downfall right there from
restaurant owners. Before you open more locations, stop. I've seen way too many owners go from 1 to 2 to 3 to bankruptcy. I know because I was once there myself. The difference in owning multiple locations is how you have to change, and if you don't make the shift, it'll take years to recover. I took my 3 biggest lessons and put them in a free ebook called the Multi-Unit Playbook, so you don't have to go through the same struggles that I did. Go to the link in the description below and get your free copy today.
From owner to manager, that transition that you learned through trial and error over many years, and I did exactly the same thing. That is the key right there. It's the communication between yourself and your leader, and setting it up in a system and in a way that you're constantly growing and developing that person to be what they now need to be, which is very different than what they were before. If they came up the ranks, and even if you're hiring from outside, when they come in, they might have been a successful manager somewhere else, but they have no idea who you are, what you expect, and what your business is. They don't know your team, so they have to build up into that. So it's almost like they have to take that time to feel like they were promoted from within. They got to get to know the place, know the people, know the systems, and understand your expectations of them so that they can actually fulfill those expectations.
And your leadership style and your values, because those are different. Because maybe the way that they I'll just give you an example. Like, if you were in a fine dining establishment versus McDonald's, the culture is going to be different. The way in which you would manage people is going to be different. The expectations are going to be different, right? Just because they manage in a restaurant doesn't mean they manage in your restaurant, right? There's going to be differences there, and we really, really need to make sure that we're focused on that. And so another thing that I wish I would have known is that I needed to put steps in place to ensure that I had line of sight to what was going on with my manager. One of my downfalls is whenever I talked to the manager I put in place, my only point of contact was with her. Okay. So whether that be a 10-minute phone call per week that we had, or maybe on the rare occasion I went to get all the deposits and I just sat down for 20 minutes and just asked how things were going. Regardless of all of that, my only point of information was from her, and she would say, oh, well, this person's terrible and this person's terrible, and blah, 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 blah. And so I was like, oh, well, I guess they need to be fired or whatever.
It's always when there's a fire, right?
Yeah. And I didn't really dive deeper into that, and I really didn't kind of do my due diligence. I didn't really inspect what I expected. And so one thing I learned later is we actually started doing this later on, is we actually started doing surveys every 6 months. And so we would have we'd have regular performance reviews of the location, which I started doing later on. We would literally have a big checklist of all the things that needed to be in place. We'd do an audit of every one of my locations, and then we would create a plan on how we're going to get on track with that, if it was off track, or how to keep it if it was. But Another thing we started doing is we used to do every 6 months performance evaluations of every manager, and I had a performance evaluation too, which means that all of my managers and our supervisors all filled out surveys about my performance, and I had someone else facilitate this. But for our managers, we would send out surveys to all of our employees and get them to fill it out. And it was anonymous feedback, and we would do that to try and see if there was any issues that we weren't seeing. And some of the questions we asked were literally like, what is this manager's biggest area of improvement? Like, what are they doing well? What can they improve on? If you had to change one thing about this manager's performance, what would it be? Like, do they hold up our core values? And we listed them out. Like, it just, we would do these feedback surveys, and then we would take those results, and then we would go and have a meeting with that manager and come up with an action plan to be able to work on it. Because, we had to look at the business's performance and the stuff that we could see, but we also had to look under the hood, so to speak, because sometimes the manager can hide issues from you, right? They can do that.
Oh, yeah.
A manager can literally threaten people, be like, don't tell Andrew this, and I'm pretty sure that happened on some occasions.
Or you can put a manager in place, and they can be your night manager for those 4 a.m. shifts, and 6 weeks go by and they've been taken from the till and you had no idea. Yep. And because you put too much trust and you didn't have enough accountability or enough actual conversations about things to see anything. So, that didn't happen to me at all.
Never. Oh man, we should almost just do a full episode on just the amount of times that, we've had people either, steal or whatever. And again, and I look back and I look at that, and yes, it is never okay to steal. But the question I always come back to is like, how much we knew that they stole versus how much we didn't catch. And so right. I look at that, I'm like, that's on me, because my systems weren't strong enough. I wasn't running. It's not okay to steal. However, if we don't have the systems in place, you have to, it's on us at the end of the day. It's our business. So
that one incident was huge. Yeah, it was huge in learning and implementing systems so that would never happen again. And it was a big one for me.
Yep, absolutely. So I think the point that we're trying to get to here is, if you hire a manager, and we're going to talk in a sec about hiring strategies and things like that when it comes to management. But if you're promoting from within, no matter what, you're going to need to train the manager. You are going to need to set up a system that they can be successful in. So what should a manager do? Like, how many of you guys actually have a job description for a manager, and then also have day-to-day duties for a manager? Because you know how your business probably has checklists for opening, closing, and everything. And if they don't, you should probably get some. But how many have that for a manager as well? Right? And how many have a performance evaluation for their managers to know if they're doing a good job or a bad job, or they need more training? How many of you guys have a management training program? And by the way, just teaching them how to do a US Foods order or a Cisco order is not enough training, because that doesn't teach them actually how to do the job of management, which is a soft skills job, right? Learning how to do an order, that's one thing, but that's an operational thing. The people are the job of a manager. And so when I train managers, it honestly took 6 to 8 months. We have a training program that lasts exactly that long. And it takes time, and it is deep and in depth. And this is now what we do with our clients as well. But it was the exact same training program I put my own managers through. And so it takes 6 to 8, 9 months to actually get them proficient on that skill set. And so that's what we need to make sure we cover. So how many of those things do you guys have in place when you're promoting your manager? My guess is probably not a lot, or not enough of what needs to be there. So that's where you got to start, because otherwise you're setting your managers up for failure, and you're either going to burn them out, or you're going to end up firing them and saying, well, managers don't work for me, when that's not true. It's just that you didn't actually have a system that they could work in, right? You can't put a manager into a dysfunctional system and expect them to succeed. Okay, so if you're looking at hiring a manager from the outside or even from the inside, I just want to share with you a couple lessons that I think are really, really crucial when it comes to that. We actually do have a manager hiring toolkit. We will put the link in the episode notes. for you guys to take a look at. It actually just has our exact hiring process all throughout, written right out. And so you can see the level of detail in which we like to do things. But having said that, there's one piece that you guys can take home with you when you're talking about hiring management is we want to find someone who will do the job, not someone who can do the job. So let me tell you what I mean by that. I once had an interview with a potential manager, and one of our questions was, for internal hires, give me an example of when you upheld a policy with your team before you were in a leadership position. Because we believe that people who cared about our standards, say if someone didn't wear the uniform, even if they were the same level as them, would be like, hey man, you're supposed to wear a uniform, you need to go put that on, right? That's what I would expect. And literally I had seen that exact example and this person didn't say anything. And so I was like, give me an example of when you did that. And he's like, no, I guess I can't really think about it. I said, well, I saw that this person wasn't wearing a uniform properly and you didn't say anything. Tell me more about that. He's like, well, yeah, it's not my job, but if it was my job, I would then do it. And so I fell for that because I'm an idiot sometimes. And guess what? He got the job. Guess what he didn't do? Any of the shit he said he was going to do, because we are looking for people that have a track record of doing the things that we want them to do already, because that tells me that they have a higher likelihood of doing it when they're working for us in that position. So an example could be accountability. I always look at examples like customer service when I'm interviewing frontline people. If I say, hey, what was your most memorable experience with a customer? And they give me 10 different examples about how they made a customer's day and how it was super memorable for them, versus the guy that was like, oh, one time, I forgot to give them fries and then I gave them their fries. There's a difference in between those two. The person that goes on and on with oh, Billy comes in every Tuesday night and he gets this.
Remembering customer names.
And then gives you multiple examples. Okay, this person definitely has that pattern. Give me an example of when you went above and beyond to complete a task. Oh, well, this one time I did this and blah, 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 blah. Oh, and another time was this. Ooh, and actually I don't want to forget this one. I also did this. Versus the dude that's well, one time, it was already checked off the list that I was supposed to mop the floor, but I mopped a little bit more. Great, buddy.
I have the bad examples. I was a surfer dude.
I know. I don't know why I do that, but literally these are this is word for word from interviews that I've had.
Yeah,
that's literally the tone that I get from people sometimes.
I thought you were taking those from my interviews from back in the day.
So anyway, that's just something that happens. And so we want to find people who will do the job because they have a track record of doing the things that we want them to do. So if you want someone to hold others accountable, they need to show you evidence of how they've done that. If you want someone to come in and help increase your sales, they need to give evidence of how they've done that in the past. If you want someone that comes in that's going to be able to, bring your food costs down, they need to give you 10 different ways that they've done that in the past, versus the person who's I'd figure it out. Which one of those is more likely? Clearly the one who's done it, it has 10 different ways to do it and has, 10 different examples of how they've done it, right? So when you're hiring a manager, that's the difference, because there's plenty of people out there who could do the job. The question is, do you have the time to babysit them long enough to make sure that they actually do the things, right? Now, let me tell you something else, though. If that was their personality, they probably would have already done it. Because guess what? People that are naturally disposed with that type of personality to do the things that what you want them to do, they will already have evidence of that. And if they don't, it just means that that's not a pattern for them. So this might not be the right position. It's not that they can't change, but let's face it. How much time and effort do you want to put into someone who may or may not get it? And it is up for them to decide whether they do it or not. Here's a perfect example of that. Have you ever had someone who came and said, hey, I want a raise? And you were like, dude, this employee is shit. So I'm not giving you a raise until you show up on time and do more of this thing or that thing. And if you can prove these things to me, I will give you the raise. Now, I have fell for this because guess what? If they were a great employee, I would have said no problem. And in fact, I actually would give raises to people who were great employees before they asked, because I felt they deserved it. And it was a retention strategy. And for those, Like it was always the underperformers who always asked for raises. 'Cause they just had this weird belief of like, that they were better at whatever. Anyway. But the point is they weren't. But I would say, hey, do these things and sure, I will give you that raise. And guess what? They would do those things for like a week. And then as soon as they got the raise, their performance went right back down to what it was before because they had the choice to do it, right? And they chose to do it to get a reward. But then I ended up just letting them go afterwards because now they were an overpaid person who did, the same amount of shit that I wanted them to do before, that they weren't even worth the wage I was paying them before.
That they weren't doing in the first place, yeah.
Exactly. So what we are looking for is people who are going to do it anyway, whether they are paid for it or not, or get a raise for it or not. If you find the people that will do it anyway, reward those people and put them into positions where they're already doing the stuff that you want them to do, and that will be your streamlined way to success.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, what I love about the interview guide that we provide and that we use is exactly that, is you're hiring for a character. The skill set can be taught, but again, it's regardless, you're hiring somebody new. So everybody gets the same training coming in, but you have to understand the character and what the probability is that person is going to do the things that you need them to do. And everything else can be trained and taught. And once they get into that, once they actually get into the fold, then what I also love about the program is that, and the systems, is that soft skills can be taught, and even one level further, they can be systemized, right? Yep. And that's some of the things that you were talking about before. When you have a weekly manager meeting or leadership meeting, when you have regular one-to-one meetings at each level, when you have conversations between the owner and your general manager or your regional manager, systemized so that you're constantly meeting every single week, very simple, quick meetings with an agenda, not just a bitch session, right? Or a catch-up session, but you actually have an agenda and you're looking at specific things. When you systemize these things, that is how a manager is being taught the leadership system. They already have the innate ability and skill set to do it because we identified that in the interview, right? Through character. But now it's like, okay, now let's systemize it and make it so freaking foolproof that you can't help but be successful because there's accountability from the bottom all the way to the top. There's the right conversations being had from bottom to top, and it is all done like clockwork, and it works. It's such a beautiful thing.
And let's go one step further on that too. Is when I talk about like when we're hiring for character and stuff like that, I'll give you an example. It's an example of we can train someone what to say, but we can't train them to be observant enough to know that they should say something. So let's give an example. Like say someone again is not wearing the uniform. If someone says something about it naturally because they know it's not correct and they've observed it and they took action on it, that is something we can like change what they say or finesse it or get them to say it better or get them to look at other things as well. But we can't train them to know that they should say something. That's something that's already there. It's either there or it's not, right? Yep. And we need to find the people that are naturally going to do that, and then we can just change what they say or finesse it or do whatever. But that inclination of that they should do something, right? That's something that's internal. It's like I can teach someone how to make the products we serve, but I can't teach them how to smile, right? I can't teach you how to be a happy person. You're either going to be a happy person and then I can work with you on how to make the products, but like I can't teach you to be happy. That's something that has to come from you, So there's certain things that we can work with and certain things that we can't. And so in our interviewing, we're trying to find people who have that internal stuff already set up, and then we can teach them the external or the how or the what we're looking for.
The last thing you want to do is hire a project. You don't want to hire somebody that you need to save or fix because you're the nice person and see a project. You need to hire the person that's already has those skills that you want. Yeah.
We've all done it. And then we put in so much effort and so much work, and then just my personal experience, they will typically leave and you will be left there like, why did I spend the last 6 months working on someone who is never going to get it anyway? And I've just wasted 6 months, and now I have to go back to the drawing board because I made the wrong hiring choice. So,
which is another big point.
Yeah. And in my example, I ended up having to go back and rebuild that location. So my story from the start, I had to go back and rebuild that. I had to go back and set things right again. And to be honest, it was never the same as where it was before. Now, the reason I say that is also because our lease expired. And this is a story for another day, but our lease expired, and the landlord actually gave our space to someone else. So just for anyone who's opening more locations, always make sure you have options to renew, because I had a 10-year lease there, but I was taking over a lease from someone else who had owned it before, and I had no options to renew. So I ended up literally losing my business that I had spent 10 years and 100-hour weeks building, and just was able to take the equipment out of it. And I tried to do as much as we could, and we relocated to a different area. But man, I'm telling you, it was never the same, and then we ended up closing and relocating. But yeah, I mean, it was a tough lesson to learn. And, I don't wish that on anyone. So that was a business I had to close down, because the landlord pulled our lease at the end of the term. So just FYI, anyone who talks to me about new locations, I always make sure to check their lease, just to make sure they're making favorable terms for themselves. Because the last thing you want is to finally pay off all your loans and be like, yeah, everything's going to be great now, and then you don't have a business anymore that you've been building on someone else's property, and then you're stuck. But nonetheless, the point is, at least from a management perspective, you don't want to have to be pulled back in and have to rebuild, because there's customers you're going to lose, there's employees you're going to lose, and it's a heck of a lot harder than just maintaining something that's going properly. So make sure that when you do hire a manager and do bring someone on, make sure you actually have that system dialed in and figured out, because otherwise they're not going to be able to be successful the way that you want them to be, just because they're probably not going to be as good as you, and that's okay. But at the end of the day, you can't expect them to be you and expect them to be better than you in this situation. There needs to be a succession plan. So if your manager ends up leaving, getting fired, quitting, having to go to the hospital because they're sick and they end up in a hospital stay for a while, whatever happens, who's going to take over? What's going to be that continuity plan for your business? And if you don't have that, you are going to be the one that solves that gap. And especially if you're at multiple locations, it's not if management turnover will happen, it's when. And so you need to be prepared for it. And that's actually in my multi-unit playbook. I have a strategy on that, which goes into it. But guys, thank you for being here today. Thank you for listening. I hope you guys found it helpful. And if you did, please give us a 5-star review, share with another restaurant owner who could benefit from tips like this. Dave, thank you for being here. Insightful as always. And everybody, we'll see you on the next one. This episode is brought to you by Ownership Training, where we help restaurant owners increase their profits while spending more time with their family. And if you want to know exactly what it would take to grow your profit margin to 15% and beyond while spending more time with your family, my team has a few spots open this week for a free 15-minute restaurant assessment call. Just click the book a call link in the description, and we'll show you the exact frameworks we're using to help our clients do this in as little as 6 to 8 weeks. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.